Welcome to the 2026 Contract Summit. Thank you all for being here on your Sunday afternoon. I'm Becca. I'm an organizer for UAW Member Action. And today we're going to be talking about the contract fights ahead this year. So we'll be hearing from UAW members who have fought and won recent contract fights, and they'll be sharing their lessons. If you haven't heard of UAW Member Action before, we're a network of UAW members working together to win stronger contracts and to enforce our rights on the job and in the union. We're here to help with tools and resources for your contract fight, and we also share info from grievance handling to this year's Constitutional Convention. Here's our agenda for today's webinar. So we're going to walk through some of the major contract battles that are coming up this year. Then we're going to be getting into some strategy. So what is a contract campaign and what difference does it make? We'll go over some basics of bargaining. We'll go over the stages of a contract campaign, and then we'll talk about some tips for building power through collective action. Then finally, we're going to be sharing some resources on how to bring a contract campaign to your local, and we'll also have an opportunity for you to ask some questions of our panelists. We have 4 members here who are veterans of successful contract campaigns in their own shop. Yolanda Yogi Peoples is a member of the UAW Local 42 bargaining team at Volkswagen in Chattanooga. Kim Deschamps and Joanna McLenathan at General Dynamics Electric Boat in Groton, Connecticut are with the Marine Draftsmen Association in UAW Local 571. They were both strike captain organizers during their last contract fight last year. And John Green, a 23-year UAW member and president of UAW Local 3520, representing workers in 3 Daimler Truck units in Cleveland, North Carolina, as well as Ford and SBM nearby. John was a part of the 2024 contract campaign at Daimler that has really served as a model for others across the UAW. You'll be hearing more from all of them soon. Okay, so a few bits of business before we get started. So when we launch a poll during the webinar, you should see this window pop up on your screen. There's a chance you might have an issue where the window doesn't open automatically, so here is how you can open that manually at the bottom of your screen. You basically want to swipe the menu on the bottom over to the right if you're on a phone, and then you'll see a button that says More, and you'll see polls and quizzes, and then you should see that same window pop up when you click that. So we're going to do a little practice. You should see a poll come up on your screen, and we want to hear from you all before we get started. What is your experience with bargaining and contract campaigns? Maybe you have a contract expiration coming up. Maybe you're in contract negotiations now. Maybe you just settled a new contract, or you've been on a bargaining committee. Maybe you've been on strike, or you've been part of a contract campaign and held a rally or a practice picket. If you're having any trouble, let us know in the chat and we can try to assist you. All right, well, we've got a great group here. Some of you are in bargaining or you're organizing contract campaigns right now. And we've also got some experienced organizers and negotiators with us too. So let's get into the first section of the webinar, 2026 contract battles. So this is a big year. You can see on this map there are pretty much contracts expiring across every major sector of the UAW and all across the country. Employers are watching what we do, and so are other workers. So current members of our union and potentially future ones, when they see us fighting and winning, they want to join up. A month and a half into the year, there are already some exciting fights from a couple of these areas. So you may have heard 4,300 Volkswagen workers in Chattanooga who voted to join the UAW in 2024 have won a tentative agreement for their first contract. This is really huge. It's the first time that assembly workers at a major auto plant have voted to join the UAW since the landscape really shifted with transnational companies starting to build auto plants in the South like Volkswagen, Mercedes, Hyundai. The workers at Volkswagen have shown that it's possible to grow the UAW in this new landscape, and we hope that they're paving the way for more to come. So with that, I'm going to introduce Yogi Peoples, a member of the bargaining committee for Volkswagen, UAW Local 42, to tell us more about it.
Hello, I'm Yolanda Peoples, and I'm a proud member of the UAW at Volkswagen of Chattanooga. Okay, when I first joined the bargaining committee, honestly, I was intimidated. I didn't know what to expect. We were sitting across from management, and we was not just sitting across from management, we were sitting across a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But every time I walked in a room, I reminded myself that I wasn't alone, but I was carrying the weight and the frustrations and the hopes of the thousands of workers that were inside of that plant that had elected me into this position. For a long time in the South, we were told that we should be grateful for whatever the company had decided to give us. But through the process, realized that the gratitude doesn't pay for medical bills. Gratitude doesn't ensure that we have a safe workplace. And so this contract did. It put in black and white exactly what you expect to happen. And it was a guarantee and not just a broken promise. Being on the committee felt like a roller coaster. There were long nights and tough debates where we had to hold the line. We were feeling of finally reaching it. But when we finally met the when we finally got this done, and it included a 20% raise for the workers, better health care, and a real dignity, it was worth the journey that we had gone through to get our union contract finally done. And it's been a great experience, and we are proud to present it to the workers and get this ratified so we can get started.
Thank you, Yogi. We're really excited to hear about the TA vote this week and the next steps of building your union.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, next we're going to be talking about a few of the other fights coming up this year. So in California, over 40,000 academic and research employees at the University of California, represented by UAW Local 4811, are currently in contract negotiations. So this includes graduate researchers and academic student employees with contracts expiring February 28th, as well as student services and research staff who are bargaining their first contracts. The local held a strike vote across all three of these units. It closed on Friday, and it had over 93% support for a strike, and maybe even more impressive, 23,000 members voting, which is crazy. Their bargaining demands include better pay, job security, and protections for international student workers. So we're standing solidarity with all of you out in California, and we're going to be watching this important fight. Another active contract campaign going on. Earlier this year, Local 2192 members at Lorain County Job and Family Services authorized a strike by 86%. And now they've announced a February 18th strike deadline, so that's this Wednesday. These workers administer essential public services like SNAP, Medicaid, and child care assistance, and they're demanding that their wages be brought up to the county average because they're dealing with a lot of staff shortages and high turnover. So the picture here is from a rally that they held on Tuesday to show that they're serious about their strike deadline. And from everything we've been hearing about this fight, it seems like their employer, the county commissioners sitting across the table from them, are really pulling every dirty trick in the book. So Local 2192 members will be sending our solidarity your way this weekend for as long as it takes to win a strong contract. Okay, next up, we're going to be talking about some of the major contract fights still ahead of us this year. International Motors, which is formerly known as Navistar, is a heavy truck company. These workers in several UAW locals across the South and Midwest have contracts expiring in October of this year. And this is a major opportunity for coordinated bargaining across the units, totaling over 2,000 workers. Next up, so we've got over 70 IPS contracts expiring this year, and it's a major chance for these workers who have been hit harder over the last few decades than almost anyone else in the auto sector to win back wage increases and benefits like COLA. So a lot of these shops were spun off of the big three when automakers were trying to cut labor costs and keep control of the supply chain. And, like a lot of members across the UAW, members in IPS are especially used to hearing there's no money. But it's not true in other sectors, and it's not true across all of IPS either. So we could highlight a lot of contract fights in this sector, but we're going to look into one where we're already seeing some motion on a contract campaign. We have UAW contracts expiring at several American Axle plants across the country this year. American Axle is a driveline manufacturer that was originally spun off of GM in the 90s. The company has been shifting production to countries with lower labor costs, including Mexico. But at the biggest US plant in Three Rivers, Michigan, the company invested over $100 million late last year, and they cited tariff pressure. So we're seeing a shift where automakers want parts made closer to where the vehicles are built because they don't want to get burned by tariffs. Contract talks for this growing plant with 1,100 workers before the expansion are set to start in late April, and Local 2093 has already planned a rally for late March. So we're really excited to see what comes next for members at American Axle, and we're going to be watching this fight as well. Okay, so there are a lot of more opportunities for contract wins coming up in our union this year, many more than just the ones that we got into here. A lot of you on this webinar right now are in negotiations or entering negotiations soon. So let's talk about the strategy now that's been spreading throughout the UAW. I'm going to pass it over to Kim from Electric Boat in Groton, Connecticut, to talk about the difference that a contract campaign makes.
Hey, brothers and sisters, can you hear me? Good.
Yep, we can hear you.
So over the years, I've been a member of UAW for over 20 years, and I have seen a big shift in what's been going on from what we used to do to what we just did with our most recent campaign and what other locals have been doing and the huge difference that that's been making for us. So as some of you may know, we had a change of leadership, and 2023, they really helped our big three as they changed their approach to how they're doing campaigns. Really what most of us were used to. Prior, remember, we take more and more concessions on as they took more and more profits from us and built themselves. Instead, they started a contract campaign with those big three. Some of you may remember the stand-up strikes that were really the crucial part of making a lot of that happen. I know I had been told for years, and so had many of our big three brothers and sisters, things are just gone and we're never ever going to get them back. And this strategy proved that that was just not true. They were able to get COLA, which is cost of living adjustments, eliminated some of their wage tiers and brought some of the things back up to the same pay scale across different groups. They got the first bonus for their retirees in over 17 years. That is huge. Just so many things that they built because of the changes in how they'd used their campaign strategy. So following them, coming up in the spring, Daimler Truck stood up and started also following this new strategy, allowed them to win a lot of things like profit sharing, which was a first for them. They also got that cost of living adjustment for their members, 25% pay raise for their employees and members over the 4 years. Right? We're just going to stop accepting that concessions is how business is done anymore by involving our members. So, right, building momentum, continue doing that through more and more campaigns as we saw that it was working out well, right? From Allison Transmission, our Cornell Maintenance and Dining folks, Rolls-Royce up in Indianapolis, and then at my local as well at Electric Boat. So what's the difference between what we've done before, our traditional bargaining, versus that contract campaign strategy? So again, I've been a member of our local for over 20 years, so I had seen how bargaining was done, right? They tell you, hey, our negotiating team's going to sit with the company's negotiating team. They're going to go in a conference room and it'll be a few weeks. And maybe you'll get a letter like once a week that's joint with the company and the union saying, yeah, we're continuing to negotiate. But that's it. You're not going to hear about what's happening. And they would typically tell us, well, we can't tell you what's happening because what if today we negotiate this healthcare thing we really like, but then a week from now, as we try to negotiate better wages, we end up giving up some of that. So stuff's just going to change. So any rumors you hear is just the company trying to break us apart. And right, that sounds really plausible. And then, right, so you're sitting as members waiting and seeing, and so is the negotiating team. Well, if this is what we want, like, what are they willing to give us? And really kind of depends on what can your negotiating team say. Well, I know you like your profits so much, but our members could really use another day off, and you should give it to them. And the company kind of going, not so much. And then, right, the members are going to look at their negotiating team that they elected and going, this is all you could get us, and blaming them for those. A contract campaign strategy, different in a number of ways. So first and foremost, right, your members are in much better contact with the negotiating team through things like your strike captains. So the contract team is telling, and the negotiating team is telling you what's going on, what were they talking about today, what was the company trying to offer versus what were we asking for. So our teams could flow that down to our members, and our members could flow up to our negotiating team. Hey, this is what's really important to us, or why that won't matter too much, and kind of get that information back and forth. A much better conversation. That also led to our members taking more public action. So before we're waiting, and kind of our members are sitting on their hands just waiting for the team to do their thing. In this strategy, you're going to see a lot more practice pickets. You're going to see things going up on social media. You're going to see big meetings where all your members come out and are talking about it and getting involved, showing the company that, hey, this is not some idle threat. Like, we are ready and we care. And that's how things work, where your results then kind of depend on how much you can leverage everyone. In our union, when you're a new member class, we talk to you about how you spell union, you and I. It starts with you and I. And if you and I aren't there making that power to get that better contract, that's on us. But then as a result, as all of that leverage and momentum builds, your members now feel more ownership and you have more leverage against the company, which really helps you get better things. But also, the members see that it's the management team and not the negotiating team that's really at fault if things are going awry. Which brings us to kind of the basics of bargaining and how it all works. So 3 quick rules to live by. 1, no such thing as a free lunch. I would love to be on a negotiating team where I could walk in and go, hey, so our members want X, Y, and Z, and the company goes, sure, here you go, and we sign and we're out. But that is not the way it works. The companies want their profit margins. They want control over our members. So the only way to get those things is to fight for them. Which is why step number 2 is that contract is going to be all about the reflection on that power that you build within your membership, and that they push and push and push behind you and continue to raise that negotiating team up, giving them the leverage they need. Number 3 is always scary, I know most of the negotiations I've been a part of, and especially this last one, right? You're holding out for these different things. You're telling the company how important it is. And I think it was 30 minutes before I had my picket ready, my sweatpants on. I was ready to go hit the picket line. And it was 30 minutes before when our negotiating team came back and said, hey, they gave in. We're getting most of these things. We'll see you at the info session tomorrow. So it really happens in those last couple of minutes, which can be scary, but totally worth the wait. So now we've got John, who's going to break down the different stages that there are to a contract campaign really in detail for you.
All right, so can everybody hear me? Okay, so stage one of the, or excuse me, I can't see the slides. I'm having an issue over here. Okay, there we go. So stages of the contract campaign. First is the foundation. The foundation is getting people together with the same okay, foundation, and then the kickoff. The kickoff rally is really important. You get everybody together and kick it off, and then you escalate. I can't see. I'm missing something here. It's my bad. Hold on. Okay, so the foundation is the beginning of is when you start your contract. You get everybody together, and you first get together, have some classes, and you want to start about a year ahead. You want to teach teach the members that we got to get together and we got to start saving some money because you're gonna have to put some back because you might have to go on strike. Start having some classes about how to pay bills or how to put money aside at least 6 months ahead of time, and then you go to the kickoff, and the kickoff is you start getting strike teams together, and you want to do that 6 months ahead of time. And what we did was we put about 10 people to a strike captain, and by doing that, we would hold strike meetings in the plants. We wanted to be seen by management, and we had to do it off the clock, and we wanted to be seen by management when we did it, so they knew what we were doing. They know we were going to go on strike, and we put about and we would give by putting strike captains in there. They knew they could relay the message. It was the same message from the president down to the bottom, the lowest seniority member. And then the escalation, that would be your practice rallies and pickets, and escalating up to the peak of our strength. And by the time we get like Kim said, it was about 10 minutes before our contract broke, or 10 minutes before our contract ended. We got the word that we got everything we wanted and then some. I wasn't expecting to get cost of living allowances. I wasn't expecting to get profit sharing. That was unheard of in the South. And then comes the resolution. All right, next slide. All right. So stage one, I think I'm okay. So you assemble the contract action team and the strike team. Like I said, you want to put about 10 members to each strike captain. That's what we did. Depends on how many people you have in your local or in the units that are going in. Survey the members to set demands. QR codes. We sent out QR codes. We wanted to know basically the top 10 demands they had, and our first one was job security, and then we had really fell behind in wages because we had been in a long 6-year contract, and then so on. Then we wanted to make a plan timeline of our actions, and research of your target is really important. On to the next slide. Okay, yeah. So there's a research team that the UAW International's put together, and that's really important because a lot of our members was really scared because they think we're in the South, like Yogi said, we're in the South. They've been told that they work for peanuts down here because they've been told they'll just up and leave, especially that's what Southern workers think. So when we put some things out in front of their face and said Daimler made this in since 2018, because we got put in a 6-year contract and since 2018 and COVID, and things had really went south for us. Like we felt really behind, but by putting these numbers in their face, how much Daimler had made, it was ridiculous. And then our members got real fired up seeing that they could that how much they had made and how much that they were wanting to give us, because we've been used to getting a 2% raise every 2 years. So anyway, the role of the contract action team is to keep members informed, that's your strike captains, and plan and lead job actions to support negotiations, practice pickets, practice rallies, and such. Represents major groups of workers and maintains connections throughout the campaign. So, one strike captain per about 10 people is what we did. And the president could communicate to 50 strike captains, and the strike captain could communicate to 10 people apiece. And that's how it takes a lot off the president. It also gets more people involved, because people want to be involved. They just don't know how sometimes. And that's what the strike captains, they can really play a major part. The role of the bargaining committee is to negotiate with the employer, to assert member priorities, and to convey progress to members regularly. To assert member priorities means that bargain survey to let the company know our number one thing is job security, or whatever it is for you guys, but ours was job security, and then wage increases, and then so on. We want these top 10, and we're not going to settle for less, meaning no concessions, and then convey table progress to members regularly. In contracts in the past, or negotiations, it was like we didn't hear anything. A shop floor employees, we heard nothing, and we didn't know anything, and union leadership was like keeping a secret. And it wasn't like that this time. We had updates. We as leadership updated regularly, and the members loved it. They got an update every day, basically saying the company doesn't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They don't want to give you. They don't want to give you anything, and they're playing games. And they were trying to put off local bargaining team onto the international, and just conveying stuff like that really helped our membership, because it didn't think we were hiding anything, because we're updating regularly. Stage 2 is the kickoff, to put the employer on notice. The contract expiration is a deadline, not a reference point. And so in contracts before, we had so many. I think one time we had a year. There was a year extension on our contract, and then a 3-year contract turned into 4 years, and that ended up turning into a 4-year contract, and then we turned into a 6-year contract. But anyway, the deadline, April 26, 2024, was our deadline, and on April 25th at 11:50, I believe, is when Sean came across and said, "Sorry, I'm late, but we took us in there and said, sign this or we're going on strike." And we was having the kickoff rally, and he come, and me and the president at the time, and I was vice president, we were prepared to go down there and walk second shift out. And honestly, I thought that's what we are going to have to do. And he come across there and said, "We got everything we wanted." I was just like, you can't. It took all the. I was so happy because it took all the pressure off me. But if you see in the slide, the Daimler Trucks by numbers, that goes back to what I was talking about a while ago. Since 2018, profit shares soared while Daimler workers fell behind. See, that's the kind of search that the international research teams put together, that we can show our workers, and they're not scared, because they're so scared that 50-cent raise is going to, or a $3 or $4 raise is going to get them their job sent out of the country or to wherever. And then and you see the picture there, that's local 3520. I'm the president there. I'm so proud. That's my bargaining committee. There's Sean Fain. There's Mary B. McMillan. She's the AFL. She was the AFL-CIO president. She retired. And it's a lot of the other Daimler locals leaders. We could have tore the walls down in that gymnasium that day that we had at 3520. It was such a good feeling. You see Tim Smith, our regional director. We had so much support from a lot of leaders, and also to popularize and agitate around your demands, and ask members to get involved. Members are looking for ways to get involved, and sometimes, running for election and losing, that they fall away. But look, if you go ask those members to get involved and give them something to do, they're looking for something to do. They just don't know what. And this is a good time to make leaders out of people who are looking to lead. Stage 3 is escalation. Turn up the heat. Actions build over time in intensity and participation. Time your escalation with bargaining. So we had practice pickets. You see them signs right there. UAW just practicing for a just contract. Man, it was every Tuesday. We were having practices at every single location. We got 6 locations in our contract, and eventually we had a world day of world solidarity where at the German headquarters, the DTNA headquarters in Oregon, a non-union location in South Carolina, and Mexico at the Daimler location down there, and I think even in Brazil, I'm probably forgetting one. Um, everybody had a World Day of Solidarity, and when management in Germany and Oregon and Brazil and Mexico is looking out and seeing this, that says something. That you see Ricky McDowell in this picture. He's president of 5285. That's Mount Holly leading their brothers and sisters. Stage 4 is the peak strength of our contract. The strike is the most powerful weapon. Withholding your work is the most powerful weapon because they're not used to us being able to go on strike, but the fact that we are now is really says something. They don't want us to go on strike. I believe that it's like $1,000 or $1,100 for every minute that we're down on the chain at Freightliner where I work at, and so they don't want to see us go out of work. You want to demonstrate strike readiness until the moment the contract expires. Our strength is our strength is in our plan if the company doesn't flinch. You see these guys, that's my brothers and sisters. I believe at Detroit Axle and Detroit Diesel in Michigan. That TikTok mother trucker, that was a great slogan, and it was non-offensive to the other version, which we also used. And I'm thankful for our brothers at all 6 locations and brothers and sisters at many locals nationwide having our backs. And this is part of it right here, the peak of the strength. Stage 5 is resolution. That's their gymnasium at our local 3520. So that's transparency and participation. It doesn't end with a tentative agreement. You want to have rollout meetings, time to review and discuss the agreement, and you want to have a high participation vote. That's the day that you have a meeting, you go over everything, you discuss it. It felt really good this time to not have any concessions, and it felt really good to have wage aggression or wages go up right off the jump. But the job security is what we were really worried about. We maintained that. But so we sit and we went up through all that, and then we had a high participation vote. But I don't know if I mentioned earlier, another thing to building this campaign is you want to go around before during the kickoff. You want to do a card campaign. You want to get some of you guys aren't from the South. Unfortunately, the South is it's mostly right to work states. So that's when you want to go around and get cards signed. Get them, I hate to use the word scab, but it is what it is. Get them scabs to sign their cards so they can vote. And you want to go in with 100%. You want to go in with 100%. Everybody needs to be a union member. It's hard to get that way, but if you can go up from 80% to 95%, that says something to the company too. Wow, all these scabs are signing cards, so they want their word in too, and that scares the company, and it is a good feeling.
Thank you so much, John, for walking us through your campaign. It's really a model for what a contract campaign could look like, and so many of the campaigns that followed were inspired by your campaign at Daimler. I'm going to share in the chat for anyone that wants to learn more about the Daimler campaign, this case study that the union published, and we'll mention that again later. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass it off to Joanna, who's going to talk about building power through collective action as part of that escalating campaign that John just talked about.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk about building power through collective action. A big part of any contract campaign is engaging the members and moving people to take action. You have to find what motivates them and what's going to get them on board with the campaign. So the organizing bullseye is one way that we can conceptualize where the membership is at. So let's think about this in context of a contract campaign. You have a core group of organizers These are the people who are talking to members. They're out on the shop floor. They're, making a plan to get members in motion. They are setting up the practice picket schedule. This can include the bargaining team, rank and file members, standing committee members, your stewards, people who are on committees. But they are the ones who are always getting people riled up and getting them involved. Next, you have your activists. These are members who take responsibility. They can be counted on to help when you need them. They can get the word out. They're respected people in their work area, and they can help when an issue arises. They'll be the ones spreading the word that there's a bargaining survey coming out or there's a petition to sign. They're just helping you get the information out there. These could eventually become your strike captains, your picket captains. After that, in the bullseye, we have our supporters. These people are pro-union. They'll show support, such as like wearing a button. They'll wear their red shirt. They'll sign the petition, but they don't really want to like start recruiting people. They don't want to pull people in. They're gonna be there to support, but they're not the most active. And then lastly, you have disengaged members. This is probably a majority of the members in your workplace. It was for us, especially since our local did blackout bargaining for so long. A lot of people kind of showed up for the picnic in the summer and the holiday party in in December, and the rest of the year they kind of forgot they were even union members. So they don't see the union as a big part of their lives, and they don't really openly show their support. And then outside of that ring are people who are hostile or anti-union, and we don't really want to waste our time or energy arguing with them. So the next slide is an example of what the bullseye might look like in your union right now, especially if you aren't in the middle of a contract campaign or any kind of like big fight within your local. The members tend to float in and out of that disengaged layer. It would be really overwhelming to try and move everyone to the center all at once, and it wouldn't work very well. If someone has never been involved in the union before, you don't want your first ask to be like, hey, can you be a strike captain, and walk around and talk to 15 people and tell them what's going on and get them to show up to rallies. Like, that's a big ask for somebody who is in that disengaged layer there. So the best way to move members towards the center of the bullseye is to make the right ask to get them involved. Part of that is, building a relationship with the members in your area. If you are a steward, or, if you are on the bargaining committee, talking to people and finding out what's important to them. But you want to make the right ask, what's going to motivate them. So if a member is disengaged, ask them to sign on to a group grievance or join a committee, find something they're passionate about and get them involved. If they're already filing grievances or already on a committee, ask them to get a coworker to sign on. But slowly you want to move those members from disengaged to supporter, from supporter to activist, until our bullseye looks more like the next slide. Oops. Nope, sorry. Until it looks more like this. We want to have more people actively supporting, actively in that center of the bullseye. That means the balance of power has shifted in your workplace. Also, among building the relationship with your coworkers and with your members, part of that is going to be to identify what roles people will take. People who may not necessarily want to be a strike captain, they're not super outgoing, but they can find a role. So like the slide said, everybody has a superpower. So you have to find out what's important to them and move them to take action. So some of the examples we have is like the picket line chef. If you have someone who loves to cook or loves to grill, they can be assigned to making sure everybody gets fed. You have the brave messenger, which I love this picture on the slide. It's somebody, it looks like at Daimler, who put a sign on their forklift. We had one in our local who plastered his van with MDA, UAW signs, and, just the outward support like that. You have your chant leader, somebody who, may be really quiet at work, but suddenly you put a bullhorn in their hands and at a practice picket and their whole personality comes out. We had a couple of those. They get people fired up. So they may not necessarily be someone who wants to walk the floor and talk to people on a regular basis, but they could be someone who's a leader on other levels. One that was really important for us We had a woman named Anne. She was our myth buster. So we did a lot of our announcements and information sharing on social media, and people would get in the comments, as they do. And, they would ask questions, and they would spread rumors, and they would say, oh, I heard this or I heard that. And Anne was so on top of it, just going through those comments and being like, no, that's not true. It's actually this. And it was great because she's well respected in our workplace. She's very no nonsense, and people trusted her. So to have that person to be like, actually, I know that's what you heard, and I know you're scared, but that's not true. And then our benefits experts, people who worked closely with the UAW, so that when people said, hey, am I going to have, is my insurance still going to be in effect if we go on strike, to be able to relieve some of those anxieties. So everyone really can find a role to help out, and giving people that role where they feel involved is empowering for them, and it makes them a part of the process. So next we have a poll that's going to pop up on your screen. What are some of the biggest divisions in your workplace?
So we're seeing some answers come in. I'm seeing people are saying things like seniority, older and younger workers, tiers, definitely in places where there are still retirement tiers or wage tiers, race. More people saying how long you've been there. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Joanna to talk about how to address some of these divisions.
We had a lot of those divisions in our fight as well. We had the retirement tiers. We have a certain percentage of our membership that has a pension, and then I can't remember the exact timeline, but about 15 to 20 years ago, they negotiated the pension out. So there's a much bigger subsect of our membership that don't have pensions. And that was one of the things that we were fighting for in our contract campaign this time. And so we had a lot of that percentage of people who have the pension who were kind of like, I already have all this. I'm sitting at the top of the food chain as far as pay goes. Why do I need to stand up and fight for this? We also had a lot of people who were very anxious, who were, I don't want to bother going on strike because I can't afford it. And so I'll take whatever the company gives me, and we should just sit down and accept that. So there was definitely some disagreements within our membership. What we did to overcome a lot of that is we had to understand what's important to the different groups. What's going to motivate them, what's going to get them riled up. So someone who already has a pension, who doesn't care about the retirement, they might care that our healthcare costs were about to double with the company's proposal. Some of them, they wanted to put a roadblock in on one of our job categories. And so some of them were a little bit motivated by that because they didn't want to see anybody else get stuck. So one of the other things we did is we were able to lay the blame on the employer instead of, turning to your union brother or sister and saying, hey, I don't want to do this. You turn it on the employer and you say, we've had so much inflation in the last couple of years and our wages haven't kept up. We kind of lucked out in that in the middle of our contract campaign, our company was being sued for suppressing shipbuilder wages. And that news article came out and we all posted it and we were like, hey, look, this is real. Like they actually are, trying to keep us from making what we need to live. And then to remind your members of their impact. We had a very small group that we identified as being key to shutting down the plant. And I don't think they understood the power that they had. There's maybe 20 people in the whole department, and they literally would have shut down the plant. The plant could not move forward without them. And to be able to say that to them, to be like, look how powerful you are, I think was really what got them on board. Another thing that really worked for us too was we had members who went to the bargaining table with our bargaining team to sit in, and some of them told stories about like their struggles, but a lot of them just went to observe. And so especially I had a man who sits in my cube with me who was very skeptical. He was one that already has a pension, already like sitting at the top of the food chain wages wise, and kind of was like, this is dumb. We don't need to do this. Like, let's just go back to the way we were. And so we brought him to the negotiating table, and he came back and he was so angry about the disrespect from the company when he saw how we were being treated that he immediately like did a 180 and was all in from that moment on. So things like that to just kind of pull people in and to show them that we're all in this together really are helpful to build your campaign. And then the most important thing for us was we tried to make participation easy. So we made sure that our union counselors were giving out the red shirts, we're giving out the buttons, we created a flexible picket schedule so that nobody could make up an excuse like, well, I can't wear a red shirt because I don't have one. Here you go, we got one for you. You need buttons, we got buttons, and they were right there on the shop floor. They didn't have to go to the union hall. We just tried to make it as easy as possible for them. So the next poll is, what are some escalating actions you could use in your workplace?
And I'm going to ask for this poll, can people share their responses in the chat on ideas you have for escalating actions at your workplace so that we can all see your responses? Maybe you got some ideas from the speakers in this webinar. Maybe you want to try something new. Break time pickets. Marching on supervisors during a break. Button campaigns. A picket sign making party. Yeah, these are great. And I love how we've got a real spectrum of, from low risk to maybe actions that might happen later on in a campaign when you've gotten more members involved and they're not as scared. Training. Yeah, that's a good one too. You want to get your team trained up. Okay, well, with that, we're going to move into the last section of today's webinar before Q&A with the panelists, which is how you can bring a contract campaign to your local. So as we mentioned earlier, the Department of Bargaining Strategies is a new department in the International, and it has been a big part of many of the successful contract campaigns in the last few years. So Joanna and Kim's campaign at Electric Boat and John's at Daimler Truck, as well as many others, are included in that. They have some great resources for research and training up your strike team, training up your bargaining team. They can help you out with communications during your contract campaign, and their support is available upon request from your region. Bargaining Strategies is a small team, so they might not be able to help out everyone at every shop. They've made this wonderful case study that we shared earlier from the Daimler Truck campaign available online for anyone that wants to dig more into some of the key lessons and replicate this in other shops. Here are some more resources. So this book, No Contract, No Peace, is kind of a legal briefer on contract fights. So you might be wondering, when it comes to the myths that employers like to spread about strikes, what's actually true? It's important to know your rights. So Robert Schwartz has some great books on labor law, and this is one of them. And How to Strike and Win is a labor notes guide that has a lot of different information on strikes, strikes where people had the legal right to strike, strikes where people didn't, and how they worked through that. It's a great resource on, escalating campaigns and preparing for strikes. So if you're interested in starting a contract campaign at your shop, whether your contract expires this year or next year or beyond, Member Action is also here to help you. Our organizers can help you make a plan of action and train up your team, and our network is full of member organizers who have learned from their own contract campaigns and can pass those lessons along to you like they have in this webinar. This is why we want to invite you to take the next step by joining Member Action. Our network is made up of UAW members like you all, and we're channeling the momentum of the UAW right now into a lasting network of members who are trained to lead, organize, and keep carrying us forward. If you enjoyed this webinar or any of our previous trainings, we encourage you to become a member and be part of the positive change that we're making. It's just $25 a year, and you can join in the link that we will put in the chat. And you'll also get a discount on these awesome t-shirts if you join. So find the link to join in the chat, and without further ado, we are going to move on to Q&A with our speakers. So we've got a few questions already in the Q&A box, and if you have more, you can open up this box with the button at the bottom of your screen, or you can write your question in the chat. We will get started with this question that came up. What if I don't have the right to strike? So this might be the case for public sector workers in some states, or recently also workers who are on native land have been impacted by this. So can anyone from our panel share advice for workers that might not have a legal right to strike and how you would handle that? Can you still build a contract campaign?
I can take a stab at it. So my sister, my biological sister, as well as my UAW sister, she works at one of those places that can't strike, and she is on their negotiating team. So what we do with her coworkers, people who aren't unionized still have strength in normal workplaces, right? So there's still things that you can do outside of striking that still show that solidarity and that people are willing to fight back against, and show that how important this is. We did a lot of member stories with her group, where they're sharing, hey, here's why I need my pay increased because my 4 daughters haven't had a haircut in over 4 months because we haven't been able to afford one. The people on the other side of the table are also people who you have to work with every single day, and most of them takes a little chipping, but like they are humans too. And when you start showing the need, that helps. And then as they go out into the community and they're seeing these people, especially things like signs. So they went around to some of the local businesses and started having them put signs up. It still puts that pressure on these people who do care about their own image. And that helped a lot.
So I just want to, this might not be answering the question, but I just want to put this out there. Because a lot of our members get confused. In some contracts, it says it has a no strike, no lockout clause. So I just want to clarify, if the no strike, no lockout clause means the life of the contract. When the contract's up, they can lock out and you can strike. I'm just throwing that out there in case there's anyone in here that thinks they might not be able to strike. They can. It's just, and that doesn't apply to people that actually can't strike, and it's not paying the 2.5 hours dues. Instead, they're paying the like 1.44 or whatever. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good clarification, John. Kim, did you have something to add?
So I thought of one other. The school that my daughter goes to, completely different union, but some of the paralegals who work there were also trying to build momentum behind their contract. And since they work at a public school, they started getting the parents involved, and they were out at sporting events and ringing their cowbells and making sure everyone understood how a negative contract would impact not just them, but their children as students in the school as well. So getting some of the customers, even if that customer is parents, involved also helps add some extra power and strategy behind you.
That's great advice. I'm going to go to a related question. Thinking about getting parents involved or other community members. We've got someone on who's wondering, how can retirees help out in contract fights? How can they support the active members?
Well, okay.
We'll let Joanna start and then we'll go to you, John.
So during our contract campaign, we had retirees who helped us a lot with answering emails, and they would come to the hall and help us sort out some of our data, but they also showed up to rallies and they were out in the community building support. One of the things that was kind of vital to our campaign was our local has a very long-standing relationship with a lot of the community organizations. And so to be able to say okay, when we go out on strike, we're going to have the backing of these agencies, and they're going to help us. They're not going to let us starve, right? So, but those retirees were reaching out to those agencies and kind of building that support and letting them know that we were about to have 2,500 people who might be using their services. So there was a lot phone banking, compiling people's emails. There was a lot of things that the retirees in our local helped with. So there's a lot that can be done.
Thanks, Joanna. Yeah, those are all great ideas. John, did you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say retirees have a lot of time on their hands where us employed, we have to go to work. So retirees that are willing to be involved, they can. It's good that they attend retiree conferences. They can be involved with politics and stuff like that. But they can also go Joanna said, go out and get community support. And one thing I failed to mention in leading up to the strike, you're going to need to get with and someone may have mentioned it, get with community businesses. Make sure, because you're not going to be able to park on the company property if you're striking outside. The company's they're not having that. So you're going to get with the businesses in the community, and retirees can go around as well as members and get that support and say, look, it's not Daimler that's eating over here at this restaurant. It's us. And if we don't make enough money to eat here, or really, if y'all don't support us, we're not going to eat here. And then maybe getting them to put signs in the windows, just stand up Daimler, we support the UAW, whatever. Retirees have more time on their hands. That's all I was going to say.
Good point, John. All right, our next question, I'm going to throw this one to Yogi. So this member is wondering, we're a new union. It sounds like they recently organized, and the membership does not believe that they have power. How can we show them their power?
Absolutely. That was one of the struggles that we had here in Volkswagen as well. During training on the bargaining committee, that's when we were introduced to the power that we actually had, and we had to share that with the members on the plant. Inside of the plant, we had to get them to understand that that place is not going to move without them. And being on the bargaining team and in the meetings with the company, they really showed us that they want to save face in front of the membership. There were certain things that they didn't want us to say or do because they didn't want to look bad in front of the members. So we were able to tell them that Volkswagen is really scared of what you think. They really, and it wasn't that hard because they sort of seen the way that we moved inside of the plant. We were able to walk around and ensure that they won't get in trouble for talking to us, because that was one of the biggest pressures that we had. They were just scared to even talk to us because this was totally new inside of the plant. And it was to the fact that Volkswagen would not allow us to go inside of the plant to talk to the members, because when we went inside of that plant, we let them know, y'all, Volkswagen needs y'all here. We expressed it. We let them know that, and Volkswagen actually stopped us from going inside of the plant because the message that we were giving the members empowered them and let them know that they have the power to actually control whatever happens in their lives. So once we did make that clear, it took us actually going out into the floor and making that happen. And when because it's a time HR used to follow us around the floor to see who we were talking to. Managers walked through the floor to see who we were talking to. But when they see that we weren't getting any disciplinary actions against us, that really opened a lot of the employees' eyes. They were so scared to even say that they were a part of the union movement inside the plant. It was a scary deal, but we had to go inside the plant and show them that it's okay to say that you are a UAW member now.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Getting those people who are, maybe more
Yeah.
confident to take action to show
Yeah.
that, they're okay. Can you give us any
Yeah.
other, stories from actions that you guys had as part of your 2-year contract fight to get members involved and show them their
Oh,
power?
yes. Yes. We had a big struggle on keeping the members focused on the demands that they put in place for us to fight for. Once they start hearing about the money, a lot of people was like, okay, money can really solve all the issues, but they still wasn't thinking about the health care and the job security and things of that nature. So we tried to really amplify the smaller things that people really didn't recognize they had the opportunities to change inside of that plant to make the workplace safer and things like that. So we started bringing that, putting more attention to that as far as educating our members on what exactly that we're fighting for. Because once they seen the money on the table, they was like, y'all can go ahead and get rid of it. We good. Let's go get this money. Let's go. But we had to really just break down what is job security, because they didn't know what job security meant, really. We knew that this is a right to hire, right to fire state, and that's it. So a lot of people didn't know exactly what the union did as far as helping people go through their day-to-day on the job. So we really had to go through a lot of the VOC meetings, just educating the memberships and things like that. We did practice pickets in front of Volkswagen's main office. So you had the upper management watching the VOC in our red shirts. We got all the members inside the plant red shirts, and they started seeing us doing practice pickets, because right before we did our strike vote, to be able to go on strike if we needed to, we had to show the members that we aren't scared to stand up in front of Volkswagen, in front of the main office, and let them know we're tired of the way that we were treated. So just seeing that displayed in front of where we worked when the members came out, and seeing that we were taking the stands in front of Volkswagen management's looking, that really made it real for a lot of the members. They would come in and grab pickets along with us. This was just a practice for if we did have to strike, but it really empowered them. And so when you see one person doing it, they see somebody else doing it, and it brought more people in the process when they found, and especially when they finally know exactly what we were fighting for. One of the things that we had a lot of pressure with also is the politicians, of course. The politicians telling us that Volkswagen, you don't need a union contract and things of that nature. And it's a big belief in we vote for the politicians. They know what's best. So we had to really educate the members that they know what's best for their pockets, but when you look at your bank account, what is your bank account saying? You need to listen to what your bank account saying, what your heart is saying, and what's going on inside of the plant. The politicians think they cannot survive one day inside of this plant. So you really just need to go with what you feel inside your heart is right for you and your family. So we did have to separate that part, because it was a time when the elections was going on and everything. And a lot of our members were upset that the UAW was backing the Democrats and things of that nature, because Tennessee is a red state. So we had that struggle too when it came down to getting people involved. But yeah, that was one of the big issues that we have. It was hard, because Volkswagen had told us for years that they would close their doors no matter what. And that was really pushed inside of the plant. Even with us being on the bargaining team, that was always a scary thing for us inside of that plant. We had to really make the members understand that Volkswagen cannot make these cars without you, because they've always instilled in us, if they get rid of you today, they'll have 10 more people ready to take your job tomorrow. So if you sit here and fight today, Volkswagen will get rid of you, and there'll be somebody from the street that's ready to take your job. And this is not a skilled trade. They'll be able to do your job whenever, whatever. So that's what really put a lot of fear inside of our plant. People were scared they were going to get replaced. They didn't want to stand up. They didn't want to say anything because they were in fear that their job would be gone. But we had to really get them to understand that you all make this plant. You all are the reason why Volkswagen is selling all of these cars. You all have more power than you actually thought you had. And it's a hard lesson to learn when I've been there 15 years and it's instilled in you that Volkswagen is doing you a favor. You know, it was really hard to get out that mindset, but now being in this bargaining, it's really allowed me to be able to be your voice and let them know you don't have to just settle for what the company says. You can stand up and then you won't get fired. You will be okay.
Thank you, Yogi. Yeah, before we got the webinar started, we were talking about how, being a completely new union, it was obviously even more work to get ready for a contract fight. But from the conversation you all were having, it sounded like a lot of the same tactics apply in either case. And, Joanna and Kim were saying, like, this playbook was new to us too, Our
Yeah,
union's
it
been
was
around for decades and decades, and we
right.
had to learn this as well.
And we had to learn too, because the members were so tired of not receiving information from the company as far as what's going on, what's happening. So it was a real pressure for us to be more in depth and in with the members on the floor, giving them, if they demanded information. They said, we don't get information from Volkswagen. We voted you all in this position. Can y'all please tell us? So we had to be more open in negotiation than what the international staff was actually used to, as far as posting what we've done, posting what we talked to the company about. That's what the members were interested in hearing, because they were scared that we would make decisions that they were not involved in. So they really wanted to be really exposed to the whole negotiation process, and we had to keep them updated. They came knocking down our doors, wanting to know what's going on. Even at times when we didn't have nothing going on, there wasn't nothing to tell them, but we still had to let them know, just be patient.
Yeah, this gets back to the 90% of bargaining happens in the last 10%. Yogi, I'm sure that those tips will be really helpful for members who are newly organized and maybe negotiating their first contract. Encourage, anyone here who is going into a contract campaign, especially if this is your first, but, even if you've been around for decades and decades and you're ready to try something new, reach out to Member Action. We'd love to, get you in touch with more resources and help you out as you make a plan of action. Thank you everyone who is here this afternoon, and especially thank you so much to our panelists. This was really inspiring to hear about the work that you guys have done over the last few years and all of the progress that our union has made thanks to member organizers like you. All right, well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sundays.
Y'all have a good day.
All right.
Solidarity, everyone.
Solidarity.